Welcome to Make and Decorate, a podcast for makers who love to sew, quilt, and decorate. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Make and Decorate with Stephanie podcast. I'm Stephanie, and this is Season 4, Episode 73. So, I have a good show for you guys today, and it is the first time that I have 3 guests on the same podcast. They're from the same company, Hardrock Woodworks, and it's an Etsy. It's a family, basically a family Etsy business. So we are going to have a nice long chat with them, or I am, and it's going to be great because Wayne is the fine woodworker and makes the product that goes up on the shop. And he makes a lot of quilting tools and notions. So you will find out. So just stay tuned. If you want to go straight to it, might want to just fast forward, I don't know, about 10, 15 minutes, and you can get on with it. First, I want to take care of what I learned from Arne and Carlos's YouTube channel, and they have coined the phrase formalities, which basically remind you guys to subscribe and rate and review the podcast. And then I also have another reminder that I have a community group similar to a Facebook group, but not on Facebook. This is a private group on Mighty Networks. There's an app for it for any the Android or iPhone platforms, and it is free. So I will put an invite link on the podcast blog, and you just click on that, and you're able to join. So we're posting pictures of what we're making, and it's anywhere from knitting to quilting to gardening, stuff like that. So it's just, the wide range of things that are creative for us making and decorating. So that's Mighty Networks, and the name of the group is Make and Decorate Friends. You can also just go straight to Mighty Networks and find the group and join that way. And one more thing I want to mention is my Patreon page. So Patreon is a way for people and fans to support artists and creators of content by subscribing monthly to their page, their Patreon page. And in return for my Patreon page, I publish a bonus podcast episode once a month. And many times my guests will agree to talk some more with me and provide some behind the scenes content, special content that is just for my patrons. And it's not always with a guest. Sometimes it's just me. But again, I try to give some content that gives additional content and information that you would not normally have from the regular show. So it's the Make and Decorate Patreon page, and that link is also always in the show notes, which is the description on your whatever your podcast platform is. And then a link is also always on my blog page for each episode. So check that out. And I want to say thank you to my current patrons. And a lot of them, like most of them, have been with me for a while. And I really, really appreciate that. And you don't have to be ongoing. I've had a few that had a specific, amount that they wanted to subscribe to, and like for after a year, and then they opted out, which is fine. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the thought and the time and the effort that they took. So don't feel bad if you think that, well, I'm not going to be like an ongoing sort of patron, although that would be really wonderful. But I understand. And so if it can only be 6 months or a year, you can do it. So that's it. That's the end of the formalities. So it is officially autumn. Fall. Fall is here. It's upon us. And it's my favorite season of the year. I actually enjoy late summer and early fall. Um, and even I've learned to appreciate November, but once all of the leaves have left the trees, they have fallen off. It's a little hard to acclimate at first because it's just everything looks so barren and the skies start to become cloudy and stuff. But there are things all throughout the year to appreciate in the great outdoors and with the weather. So yeah, and apple picking. We're going apple picking this week, later on in the week with Koopy, my dog. This one a farm, it's not really fancy and it's not commercialized. So I love it for that. We have a lot around this Chicago metropolitan area that are big, like just, money maker type of farms with this time of year. And they have all of the attractions, whatever it be, a petting zoo, little haunted houses, corn mazes, food, like all of it. And I don't need all of that because then your pumpkin becomes like exorbitantly priced and you just came there to get like a few pumpkins and some apple cider. And now, how did pumpkins just come into this? I'm talking about apples and apple picking, but you get the gist. It's this time of year, so even with apple picking, that can be commercialized and stuff. And I know it's for the little kids, and they should kind of experience all that fun. But we just have Cooper, and I like the quiet little family-owned farms, and they are very reasonably priced. And Cooper loves to come with us. He's really a good travel dog. He loves to go in the car. So it's a really nice outing that we can bring him to. And the funny thing is that Cooper does not like apples. So there's a bunch of apples that have fallen to the ground, and you would think that he would be going and scooping a bunch of them up, but he doesn't. And right across the street to this farm, there are horses. So, and they're really just, it's like a one lane each direction road. So it's kind of close. And when we got out of the car, Cooper saw these horses. I think he's never seen horses before. So it was interesting because, they're so tall and big, and he was just very curious. He was like staring and kind of turning his head a little bit and sniffing, and it was fun. So he just loves being outdoors and with us and going in the car. And it's really nice. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to an in-person quilt workshop for the first time in a couple of years. And it was really nice to experience an in-person workshop. I do like the Zoom ones, though. I really do like being able to, have an on-demand, or even if it's a scheduled time, in the comfort of my own home, because I like being at home. But at the same time, I really remembered and realized how enjoyable in-person workshops are. And this was through my quilt guild. And so I got to see people that I haven't seen in a long time. We just were able to catch up and also learn a new technique. So Giuseppe Robaldo was the instructor, and he's a fabric designer for Andover Fabrics, and he has designed a series of mini quilt blocks that are foundation paper pieced. And they're really tiny, but like the first block that I made was about 3.5 inches square. So it can seem intimidating at first, but it's once you get going, and then when you see at the end of the block like how cool it is, it's so fun. It's just like, wow, I did that. I made a super teeny tiny pieced quilt block. And so I really enjoyed it. And another thing that I enjoyed about it is that with these mini blocks, fabric placement is key. And a lot of times, because they're so tiny and close together, and there's a lot of rows of stitching. For instance, we did a courthouse steps block, and so there's a lot of linear lines of piecing, so it really lends itself to ombre color palettes or rainbow, analogous, from one color to the next. And so we chose our fabric placement and our fabrics and our color palette first, which I love to do. And then you start piecing. So I really enjoyed it. It was an all-day workshop, and it was so much fun. And of course, when you're doing something that you love, the day goes by in a flash. So it was great. All right, and one more chit-chatty thing before we get to my conversation with Wayne, Jane, and Katie. Knitting. It is just this knitting thing in me over the past year and a year and a half has been this love-hate relationship. But this past week, I had a knitting revelation. Yes, I conquered the purl stitch. And not only did I do that, I am able to do the purl and the knit stitch from the same hand, like working yarn in the same hand, not switching back and forth like I was doing before. And it's just amazing. So I happened to do some more searching, and I went to Arne and Carlos's YouTube channel. I don't know how I missed this, but last year in April, they posted 2 videos, one on the knit stitch and one on the purl stitch, and they were in the traditional Norwegian technique. The knitting I was already doing like that, except for a couple of things. And the the one thing is that with this technique, there is a very slim chance for getting tendinitis because it's very ergonomic, the way that it's done. So, and one of the things that Carlos had said was when you wrap the yarn around your pinky finger and you have your first finger lifted up in the air, for the yarn tension, that is the shortest way to tendinitis. And he is so right, because I have had to take a few breaks from knitting because I was starting to feel it. So it didn't take me very long to learn the purl stitch. The knit stitch I was already doing. All I had to do was correct and not wrap the yarn around my pinky, and kind of keep, making sure that my first finger was down close to the knitting needle. And then the purl technique, it took a little bit, but not that long. And so now I'm just like knitting and purling away. It's just a revelation. It really is. So if you have been having issues with the way you're knitting and it hurting your fingers, your hands, your wrist, you might want to give this a try. I know that some people have their techniques that they love and that's what they've been doing forever. And that's fine. But I am so happy that I found a technique that I can do and not have the frustration that I was having before. So yay! And I am working on that elementary wrap that Vicki Holloway is working on she has a podcast, My Creative Corner 3. And Kristen Esser is also working on it. So it's kind of a thing that sort of I heard heard on the podcast and then saw Vicky post a picture. So I got interested in it and I thought it would be a great exercise, which it is, because all it is I think they call it a stockinette stitch, where every row is reversed. So you do a row of knit, a row of purl, back to knit to purl, and then there's just a little edging um, border that you make with the first 3 stitches. And yeah, it's really great. And I did not pull out. So I have probably about, I don't know, 2-3 inches of the stitching before. You can definitely see the difference of before the Norwegian technique and after the Norwegian knitting technique. But I left it in there because this is always going to remind me when I have finally, like, the light bulb finally clicked and I finally learned how to do the purl stitch correctly and ergonomically correct. I mean, it's just so exciting. All right, so today's guest features a family-owned Etsy business called Hardrock Woodworks, and I talked to Wayne, his wife Jane, and their daughter Katie. They have a really interesting story, and I love seeing just businesses that expand into the family, and love supporting small businesses as well. So stay tuned to the end because there's a special promo code for you guys to their shop as well. Today, my guest is Wayne Giuliano, the owner of an Etsy shop called Hardrock Woodworks. Hi, Wayne.
Hi, Stephanie. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for being on the show. And we also see Jane sitting next to you, and that is your wife, who is a quilter. Yay.
Hello.
And then to the left of me is Katie, your daughter, who is also integral part of Hardrock Woodworks.
Absolutely.
Hi.
Hi.
All right. So first of all, I just want to tell everyone where you're at. I think it is Maryland, correct?
Yeah, we're in a little town called Monrovia, Maryland, which is about 30 miles north of Washington, D.C.
Great. And I actually used to live in Ellicott City, which is
yeah,
not too far from you. Yeah, back in the late 90s. Yep. So, yeah, I love Maryland. I got very depressed when I moved back here because their landscape is so beautiful out there, and the seasons are a little bit long, so you can enjoy fall longer than here, and spring starts earlier.
And the winter isn't usually very hard.
Right, it's a lot more
pretty
mild.
easy.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I do have a love for Maryland, and so let's talk about your online shop. It's basically, you sell things that you make, and they're mostly fine woodworking, and then you also have products on there, so you must have a 3D printer, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So we'll talk about all of that stuff. And it seems like you're always kind of doing some new product development, and part of that is for the quilting world, which is really cool too. But that's not the only type of product that you have. So we'll talk about that too. You have some pretty interesting things on the shop there. So let's talk about your woodworking, and also, how long have you had this Etsy shop?
I think we're right at a year now. We've only been doing this for about a year.
Okay. Wow. And then, but you've been doing woodworking for probably much longer than that, correct?
I've been doing woodworking as a hobby for my whole life.
Wow.
It was just a hobby, though, until a year ago. The first thing I ever sold was a year ago when we opened up the Etsy shop. Most of the things that I did were, I'm a tinkerer by nature, so I like to fix things. And so most of the woodwork when I started was, to work around the house and to do some things in the house. and then you keep expanding off of that, you know. And I built some furniture for us when we were young, and you know, we didn't have the money to buy furniture, so I made furniture.
That's pretty
And
cool.
then we'd make things for friends, and then as the family grew, you'd make things for different people in the family. But it was just a hobby. It was a hobby that just started, like most of my hobbies, out of necessity, because I didn't have enough money to buy the furniture, so I had to build it. So.
Wow. But most people aren't that, I guess, talented or skilled to like just make their own furniture. So that's pretty a good undertaking to do.
Yeah, that's always been strange to me. I've heard people say that before, and I go, I don't understand. You need a piece of furniture, you go build a piece of furniture.
There's a little bit more to it than that. I've watched Bob Vila, so. But
well, you know, that's interesting because a lot of the where I got a lot of the initial impetus and to try to do those things was from New Yankee Workshop and Bob Villa. It was from those kind of shows where you know he showed that the techniques weren't that hard. They were something that anybody could pick up with some really basic tools.
The Yankee Workshop also had the other guy,
Norm.
Norm, yeah.
Yeah, Norm, the greatest woodscraft.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, his wood shop was outfitted like, you know, if it were a quilter's room, it would have a long arm, it would have, you know, a mid arm, sergers, multiple sewing machines. That's
my workshop can fit into one of his closets. I mean, I wish I had half of it. No, a quarter of what he had. You're right. He had the greatest workshop in the world.
Yeah. But I loved watching him, and he was a very good, like, I don't know, the camera work, it did nice close-ups. And I mean, I thought I kind of understood what it was he was doing, but then, you know, I think I try to tinker a little bit, and I'm like, I can't, no, I need to stick with fabric. So, but you know, my brother doesn't do it so much anymore, but he got into this thing with woodworking, and he wanted to do like just the old fashioned way with no electric tools and like the hand planers and stuff like that. And I thought he was crazy, but he realized after a while that it just took too long to make stuff. But he made my sister this beautiful cradle, and it turned out beautifully. And that got passed down to so many of our nieces and nephews. So I think that anything made with your hands, whether you have the, you know, wherewithal or not, is like an invaluable gift and talent and skill. So, yeah.
And it will last hundreds of years. You know, it was funny. This week I was actually helping my sister move. And as we were moving my sister, every now and then something go past, then I'd say, hey, I made that for you. And 30 years ago, right? I made it 30 years ago. I forgot all about that. I made that. So that was, you're right. It is kind of neat if it's made well with some quality workmanship and some quality products, woods and stuff. It can really last for hundreds of years.
Yeah, it really can. And now people are, you know, finding that, you know, antiques and so forth were made from there. Just like there aren't really many, you know, craftsmen or fine woodworkers that do the stuff that they used to do like 100 years ago by hand. So, and that stuff is now becoming pretty valuable, and people are seeking it out, which is kind of cool. And so that's just how you started. That's very interesting. What made you want to start the Etsy shop then a year ago?
Well, COVID affected a lot of people's lives, and it affected my life in a way where I had a lot more free time than I did previous to that. So in that, I was trying to figure out, you know, how we could add some money to the family and keep my mind active and give me something to do during the days when I didn't have, you know, my normal amount of work to do. And so I think I turned to Katie and said, I want to start an Etsy shop, almost tongue in cheek. And by the end of the week, there was an Etsy shop up and running. Not because I did it, because she did it for me. And she said, Dad, there's an Etsy shop. Now, there was only one thing on it at the time, and it happened to be, and this will be a theme as we go through, it was probably about a month before then, my wife said, I want a tailor's clapper. Go make me a tailor's clapper. So I looked at it and I went, yeah, I can do that. And I'll go make you one. So I made her a tailor's clapper. And when we put the Etsy shop up, the only thing that was on it was the tailor's clapper.
That was your first product.
Yeah.
Nice. So Katie, what was your reaction when your dad told you he wanted to open an Etsy shop?
Oh, well, he had a couple crazy ideas. He was talking about working at Best Buy part-time, and he's talking about building a garage. But he would never, he's a very modest man. He's extremely skilled in woodworking. I live in DC, and I'm, in my apartment right now. 80% of my furniture is made by him, and it's gorgeous. And I have a nightstand that he made when I was a child, and it's still here and I still use it. I mean, the furniture is just beautiful. So when he said he wanted to do woodworking, I mean, of course, I knew that because of who he is and how he works, whatever he made out of wood was going to be stunning and gorgeous and extremely high quality. And I knew that no matter what the product was, that it would sell and that people would really appreciate it because he's unbelievably talented. So that's pretty easy. I know. That's just a quick Google search, right? Just look up how to start an Etsy shop. And, actually we got in touch with my sister because, I have 3 siblings, and my sister does some graphic design. She made a bunch of graphic design stuff, and it's like you said, we got everything together in like a week. Yep, my sister made the logo. We all have shirts with the logo on it, but my sister made the logo. She made a couple other graphics, and we were in business. The Etsy shop was the easy part.
That is so cool. That's nice that you have those resources right within your immediate family, and it just seems to all fall into place. And that logo is cool. It's like a circular saw, and then you have your name, Hardrock Woodworks, kind of going through it. It's a really very
cool. Well, there's actually more in that logo than that. If you look at the top of the logo, which looks like just a little bump, it turns out to be a local mountain. It's called Sugarloaf Mountain, and that is the silhouette of Sugarloaf Mountain. And the reason we put that there is I have hiked Sugarloaf Mountain. My latest estimate is somewhere around 400 times.
Wow.
So hiked up to the top of Sugarloaf Mountain. So it's just one of the things and my kids Katie has hiked it with me, dozens and dozens of times, and all my boys have hiked it with me. My wife doesn't hike up to the top of the Sugarloaf Mountain. So we ended up putting Sugarloaf Mountain on there, and there's a little bit more to the logo than just that.
That's cool. Yeah. It makes it even that much more like meaningful to you guys. All right, so now you've got this Etsy shop, and I wanted to say back up though to what Katie said because, when you were telling me, I'm just tinkering around and stuff like that, and I have taken a very in-depth look at your shop, and I've seen your Instagram posts and those cookbook stands with the purple heartwood. I mean, there is fine craftsmanship in your products, and I can tell that. It's pretty evident, and I think that's also probably why people like to buy from your shop as well.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so let's get into these items that you design. You design, like when your wife said she wanted you to make her a clapper. How did you go about that? Did you look, kind of research at some, and then you just made this design on your own? Did you make prototypes, and how quickly did that come together?
Let's do that. So by trade, I'm an engineer. So I have a design. There's a design thing that happens in my mind, and I was, trained as a professional engineer. So I like to design things. It's not, people I know that some people get very intimidated by that word, but for me, that's what you do. You put something on a piece of paper. So the way I handle most of my designs is, because I do have an engineering background, is I do end up doing 3D drawings for almost all of my designs. So I go back to a CAD package and actually design it. So I design every dimension, everything. And then after that, if I'm working with a client and we get a lot of our ideas from people just coming and saying, could you build me something? If I'm working with a client, what I'm going to do, and I'll show you, is I usually take that 3D model and I make it into a photo rendering. Here's a picture of that, and I think it's the exact cookbook holder that you were talking about. So this was for a client. This was, someone had called me and said, would you make a special cookbook holder? I love the Purple Heart, which is the purple wood that's in the stripes, and contrasted with the maple. Can you make that? We went back and forth on this design about, probably 6 or 7 times until we got the right dimensions, the right number of stripes and everything. And what I'll do now is, and we worked off of these drawings, and then here's the product that you were just talking about.
Right.
So here's the product.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
So most of the time, if I go through enough iterations on the 3D model, most of the time we can build the product directly off the 3D model. If I really spend the time to bring the design to the level that gets it, so that we can build it. So I don't build a lot of prototypes mostly.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
For the most part, the first one we build is the first one we sell. And I have done many, many things. I can tell you, it's just the way that I like to work. I've done many, many things where you just go down to the workshop and you say, okay, I want it to be 2 cubits by 1 cubit, and you start building it. And then as you're putting it together, you go, the proportions aren't right. It should be thinner. And then you kind of throw that one away and you do it again, and you can design that way. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. I've done it many, many times. But what I've done lately, especially for the last year when the Etsy shop was open, is do it as the 3D model. Now, I'm lucky enough that I can do that kind of work, and then I can go through those iterations. If I get a model that I can rotate and see all of its different sizes, those questions of, is that proportion right? You can get most of those worked out before you ever go to the shop. So we're doing pretty good right now, being able to bring the ideas directly from an idea into a piece of wood.
And by the 3D model, are you meaning like through a 3D printer, or you're still through your CAD software with the 3D?
CAD software.
Okay.
I have printed things for sure to see what they look like, but for the most part, in the wooden things, it's just through the CAD software.
Oh, cool. Okay, that's great. And then, so the clapper, and I took a look, and that line has grown. So you have many different sizes and a couple of different species of wood. And then, so we'll talk about those first. And then I saw a post on your Instagram where there was like this mega clapper that your wife wanted.
So the clapper, I think the first clapper I made for Jane was about a 10-inch clapper, I think. I think it was a 10-inch clapper, and that's the one we put up on the website. And almost instantly, we got people coming back saying, can I have a 5-inch clapper? Well, can I have a 7-inch clapper? Now, Jane might know, and you might know, I have no idea why people want these precise clappers. It seems like a 10-inch clapper is fine for me, but and then we got people. So all of these are requests from customers coming back.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I'd like a 7-inch one. I'd like a 10-inch one. And then we had a 12-inch one. I went, wow, would anybody ever want with a 12-inch clapper? So we have 12-inch ones. Then the really large ones started coming out. People would say, geez, do you have one that's 6 inches by 6 inch squares?
Oh, so they can like press their whole block.
Yeah, but it got bigger. We made a 10-inch by 14-inch clapper, which is, I mean, it's practically a full piece of wood. It weighs about 40 pounds. No, it
oh, my
weighs
goodness.
probably about 15 pounds when you're done. It's
Wow.
a great big hunk of wood we've made for people.
Wow.
The species comes from, so that's where all the different sizes. And so as people would ask for a size, we kind of standardized our sizes now. We've got 5, 7, 10, and 12. We do have a 6-inch square clapper. Oh, and then the small ones. Then people started asking, instead of the clappers are 3 inches wide, they said, can you make one 1 inch wide? And then other people asked for one that was 2 inches wide. So we've got those variations.
Huh.
All of them were people asking. So there's a specific need for that particular size. I don't even know what it is. People just ask me. We build one.
The narrow ones, though, I don't know how effective that would be. It just doesn't seem like enough.
We've sold more than one of each, I can tell you that.
I mean,
so what my feedback would be is that with those tailor's clappers, people are using them for sewing garments because you can fit them into smaller spaces and you can use them to really get that
like
sharp,
sleeves?
crisp, like sleeves or
Okay.
collar. Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's the only guess that I have.
Right.
The other guess that I have is that people would use them for retreats because they're smaller and they'll fit in there. They're not as heavy and they're not as big. That's the only guess that I have that people would want them. And then the other thing is that, I have big hands. My husband has big hands. I like that big clapper. I think some people have said to Wayne, I would like something a little smaller. My hands are smaller. I don't want it to be 3 inches. 2 inches would fit my hand better, which I totally understand. If you're more petite and you have a smaller hand, that makes total sense to me.
Right.
So it was very important, though, for me that the clapper have the weight that we really need for getting the crisp seam.
Right.
That's so important.
Yeah, absolutely. And this whole clapper thing is like right now a phenomenon, especially in like the quilting world, because just like, I don't know how long, I don't want to say 5 years, but certainly 10 years ago, you rarely saw a clapper out there. And I've been using one for a long time because people who sew clothing use those. And so that's how I knew about it. And I did start using it when I started quilting. So I was on a search because I could not find it anywhere. Like I couldn't, like not even at the big box stores or anything. So I searched one down and I got this vintage June Taylor one, and I've had it ever since, and it's just been pretty interesting to see how all of a sudden this has like come back into the circulation of sewing and quilting people, especially quilters, because I don't think quilters ever used this, even like back in the 70s. I'm not sure, but I mean, I was just a little.
I don't know. Well, and so when Wayne was designing the first clapper with my suggestions, I did know about the tapered clapper. So you showed a clapper that tapers from a wide end down to a narrow end.
Yes.
And so what was really important to me is that I am a quilter. I have done garment sewing, but I'm looking for this to help me get that really good crisp seam without using the iron and a lot of steam and maybe potentially distorting. So I insisted that the clapper be the same width all the way around.
Okay.
Because I thought that was really important to get your quilt block doesn't taper. So the taper option gives that person the option for garment sewing to have the thin clapper and the wide clapper in one, whereas this clapper is made more for quilting because it's going to go along the whole seam of your block.
Right.
So it was really important to me to have that. And I also insisted a lot of people put a logo on. Wayne does have a branding iron that he uses to put his logo on. But I didn't want that. I said, you can never put that on a clapper. I don't want that on a clapper and he still
Your
always
logo?
yells, I don't want his logo on this clapper. It's not on this clapper. It's nowhere on this clapper because I did not want that to be any impetus when you're flattening out a seam. If that logo happened to create any type of indent, that would be awful. That would mortify me as a quilter. So there's nothing embossed on this on purpose so that there's no way for that to happen.
So then you can use either side.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And that was what was so important to me. Now, some people have asked for some wood burning effects on it to maybe show their own logo or something that they want.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful idea. And our daughter Katie is the one who can do that with unbelievable ability. But that just means to me that it's a one-sided clapper, still perfectly fine and really cute to bring on retreats if you have a nice logo on there. But for me, just that everyday clapper, I don't want to have to think about it. Let me just grab it and stick it on my seam. That's what was important to me.
Well, it's good thought into that. It makes perfect sense, and you get double the use of it. But I will say, Wayne sent me a clapper, and I love the little size because I already have the long one. So when I opened it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. And it's almost like the size of shows my age, of course, but any chalkboard eraser.
It is.
Absolutely. One of the questions you asked earlier was species. So,
yes.
So we started with maple.
Yep.
Because maple is pretty classic. You had the other one that you had there. If you look at if you go into old tailor shops, you see all of their wooden implements are all made out of maple, and they're a beautiful. Over time they turn into a beautiful golden color, right? Yours is aged pretty well. That one right there. And it's got a nice golden color. Mine will turn that, but it takes 30, 40, 50 years. But
I was going to ask you, will this turn into this color over time?
Yeah. But if you notice, one of the things that Jane also insists is there's no finish on this. This is just raw maple because she didn't want to have any opportunity of staining the fabrics. Yeah. Right. So,
that's smart.
So this is just raw wood. So there's no stain on it. That's the color it is. That's the color of maple. And it will yellow. It continue to get more and more golden as it gets older and older. Then we have an absolutely wonderful wood shop here in Frederick, Maryland. It's called Frederick Woodworks, and they have anywhere from just maple like that to pine, any other wood. But we went in there the other day, and there was an entire walnut tree that had been cut into live edge slabs. It was just absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful, beautiful wood. And when we went in there, the lady that's there, Marianne, has just absolutely wonderful. And she asked me what I was doing with the walnuts. So I showed her, and we talked about it. And she said, I got another wood that I think that you would like. And this is the other wood that we use, which is called ambrosia maple. And we call it striped maple, but its real name is ambrosia maple. It has a few other names. It effectively is the same wood. It's maple. It's hard maple. It's the same tree. But because of certain things that happen in the tree, it develops these stripes. So we do this separately. They're both the same, exactly the same, the same wood, same density, same everything, but it just looks different. It looks really neat. Some of these turn out to be absolutely gorgeous, really beautiful.
They are. They're really cool. And they to me also, I think, I don't know, they look kind of edgy and cool and modern. So I think that would appeal to a lot of modern quilters because it has that look to it.
We've got one person in particular who asked me to make almost everything that I make in my shop out of ambrosia maple.
Now, I will say one thing about the ambrosia maple is it does have some natural holes in it, but that doesn't affect, I've tried it, and it doesn't have any effect on your seams or your fabric. It does have natural holes. It's part of the wood, and it's actually, when you put your hand over it, you can't even feel the holes, but it again creates that look with that uniqueness. And it goes all the way to the end. There's the stripe on the end. So it's very unique.
Yeah, I've never seen that before. It is very unique. And the other thing too is the use of these tailor clappers is that from what I always understood was that when you put this down on the seam, it kind of absorbs the steam from the iron. And really, that's what kind of like makes this permanent crease in the fabric.
That's true. And the other part of it is if you put an iron on the fabric, you can only hold it on for so long, right? So you're going to scorch. Yeah. So what happens is you put the iron on with some steam, preferably, but it doesn't have to have steam, that the clapper will still work. And the heat. then you remove it and immediately put the clapper on with a little press.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is the wood holds in the heat and the steam,
Mm-hmm.
but again, you don't have to use steam. And it allows that crease to continue to happen
Mm-hmm.
even when you're not putting the active heat on. So you're not going to burn or scorch your fabrics,
Right.
but you're going to continue to press in that seam without having that motion of the iron that we're not supposed to use when
Right.
because we're not ironing, we're pressing.
Yes.
And that way it makes that seam significantly crisper, which I think is one of the best words ever. But it makes it a
It
crisper
does.
seam.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love it. That's and I think that when the more people are noticing that from these tools, that's what I think it has to be why there's this like resurgence of I need a clapper. And okay, so aside from the clappers, what other quilting are there other wooden products? I can't remember that you've made and sell in the shop.
There aren't any, yeah, he doesn't have any specific wooden implements that he uses for quilting, but what we found was we had one person who was very interested in taking the cookbook holder that we mentioned earlier, and they've requested certain sizes, and they put their pattern on the cookbook holder on their work surface.
Okay.
And that's what they use to support the pattern while they're working so they can see what they're working from.
Oh, okay.
So the way he designed the cookbook holder, it can hold an iPhone or any type of a cellular phone. It can hold a tablet. But this person specifically put up their paper pattern, and it was really helpful. So that's the only other wood product that specifically speaks to that, but we found it's been really helpful.
Oh, that's great. And let's talk about that one because you also use some interesting species of wood in that one. And there's a wood called, what is it called? Sapelli.
Hmm?
And I looked it up. It's pretty interesting, but it described that's on the outer like parts of the book.
It is. Yeah, I'll show you this. This is actually a cutting board. Well, it's not. It's a charcuterie board that we make that you can put a glass of wine in, so you can hold your wine glass.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I bring this is because this has sapelli. And what you're seeing here is sapelli. And my daughter will back me up. When sapelli doesn't look like anything until we put the finish on it. And when we put the finish on it, it glows. The grain on that wood is spectacular, absolutely spectacular. And this outside wood here, then these two frames are maple again, because I have lots of maple in my shop, and then walnut in the middle. And the three colors, I think, just go absolutely wonderful together.
They do.
Yeah, I don't have one here with me, but I do have a cookbook holder that incorporates this color scheme right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the sapelli too, sort of like it reminds me of mahogany. And when I looked it up, that's what it also said that it was kind of like compared to as far as the color. Yeah.
And the grain, the grain is spectacular.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, because mahogany is known for that. I don't know if it's more cathedral graining, but you could get really beautiful like book matched patterns from it for like furniture. It's so beautiful. So I'm sure that kind of might act the same way. And the purple heart, that was the other species.
Yeah, well, the purple heart, like, you mentioned this board. This board was, as I said, this board was the idea, it wasn't our design. It was a design actually that we worked with one of our customers to develop this design, but it was her thought that said, "Oh, I'd love to have stripes for that purple wood, because the purple wood against the maple, again, the light color is maple in here. Mm-hmm. The purple against the maple is just so beautiful." And we just kept working with her until we got the right proportions. Here's one where the proportions made a difference. We originally said, I don't remember what it was. She said, "Oh, I want 4 stripes that are inch long." And we put it together and it looked terrible. It looked absolutely horrible. we never committed it to wood, right? We committed it to paper. So we could continuously just move the stripes around, change the dimensions a little bit until we got something that we thought proportionally worked pretty good. This one is actually bordered on the edge with walnut. This is walnut.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and the way you use the maple with the darker color, it's striking, and it's a really good design.
Yeah, well, maple is just it brings this pop of white that's almost not expected. So.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and so let's stay on the quilting thing, and then we're going to talk about some of the other products you've made because I think they're really interesting. But your 3D printed products. So now you've got the templates for English paper piecing, the hexagons.
Right. That was a request from somebody I know too, right here. My wife started doing English paper pressing, which I still not sure that I know exactly what that is, but she said, I need these hexagons. And she said, look, and I don't remember the price, but she said, look, they're $25 a piece. I said, I'll make one for you. And I went downstairs and I made one for her. And she said, all right, it's going on in the shop. So.
Which is great. And yeah, those acrylic ones, they are so pricey. I don't understand it, but what was nice about your design is that, Jane, you probably told him that you needed it open so you could fussy cut.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And then the two sizes. So the size that you can cut your paper out, and then the larger size for the fabric. And I love purple's my favorite color, so I like that they're purple.
Well, you can get them in any color, but we do show them predominantly in the purple because I actually really love that purple. It's a shimmery purple that has a little bit of a glow, like one of those famous designers that likes purple. You know, it's got that real shimmer to it.
Oh, cool.
First, the 3D pieces. I mean, the 3D printer. It actually started with the thread cutter because when I do chain piecing, I actually snipped the end of my finger when I was clipping them one day, and I said, I have to get one of those thread cutters. And once again, I looked for the cost and said, I bet you can make this for me. So I asked him, and then once again, we moved it to the shop. But it's a very lightweight, simple one. And what was important to me is that he made it so that you can change the blade. So that if you really do use a long time, you can change the blade. Whereas the other type they're plastic you're throwing away.
Yes.
And I don't want that. So this is something that you can just take the blade out and switch the blade.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Pretty innovative there. And I love it. Like you ask him to make you stuff for your work, quilting, and then it goes into the shop. That's awesome. That's what I lost my train of thought on. I was going to say, it must be really nice that anytime you need something, you're like, hey, can you make me this?
Well, for those women who are listening or men who are listening, it is wonderful to have a partner who can make anything, but most of the time it's when he wants to make that. So right now it's great, but sometimes, there have been times when I say, I would like this. And he goes, yep. When the mood strikes me, I'm going to go in that direction. So I don't disagree. I agree with you. But if you have a partner out there that's like that, it's also on their timetable and what works for them and what inspires them.
Yeah.
Creativity can't be demanded.
Like my husband always says, I'm not a trick pony.
Yeah.
He always says that.
Katie calls me a trick monkey.
Yeah.
Oh, so that's a great thing about the thread cutter, that you can change the blade.
And then the other thing that he did, which again was my request, was I saw these expensive magnets that are housed in plastic simply because the magnets can dirty your fabric. And I wanted to have, I actually got the magnets myself, and then it dirtied the fabric and ruined those two hexagons. So I asked him to make a plastic housing so that then I could have these to hold my two pieces of, hexagon pieces together so that I could sew them as I was teaching myself English paper piecing. And that was born. That was the next item that was born
That's
that ended
right.
up in this. So
Wow. So you'll keep them busy and keep adding things
yes.
to the shop for us quilters.
Well, and as people think of it and have requested things, we still continue to look and try and evolve and
Mm-hmm.
develop new ideas.
Well, not all of our ideas come from someone asking for something. Either if it's our family saying, "Gee, Dad, can you make me something?" That drives me to go through my design process. And then once I get the design done and I think I can replicate it, reasonably well, then it goes on the shop. But lately, I think the predominance of our ideas are coming from the customers. They're coming from people saying, "Geez, can you make that?" So everybody hearing this, hearing the sound of my voice, if you're going, "Gee, I can't find give us a call, give us a yell. Maybe we can do it." And as Jane said, maybe the inspiration doesn't hit me, but that's where most of our inspiration is coming from right now.
Oh, that's good. Good to know. Some of the other things that you have made are kind of items that help people. So like you've made these little blocks for tricycles for kids, I think.
Yeah, well, what my wife does quilting as a hobby, but she takes care of children with special needs as a profession.
Oh.
Right? So the rest of those ideas are coming again from my wife or from friends of my wife that are asking for things that they need to help kids with special needs. That was a request that a friend of my wife came in and said, we used to be able to buy an adaptation for tricycles so that we could help kids with special needs ride tricycles. But he says, but they went out of business. We can't find anything anymore. Can you make something for it? I happen to have one. So I made it out of plywood. Mm-hmm. So it's a really simple device that you just clamp on. So the pedal goes in between here and you clamp it on the pedal, and then you can put the child's foot down, attach the child's foot with Velcro so that they can keep their foot stable. Mm-hmm. But again, I go back to 3D printer. The reason that I could do this, and other people could do this, of course, but the reason that it was relatively straightforward for me to do this is because first it's wood. I know how to do wood. But if you notice the backing plate, which is an essential part of it, is 3D printed.
Oh, yeah. For the heel.
It's the heel cup. Yeah, the heel cup. So the heel cup is 3D printed. So the 3D printer is not only, we don't just build products with that. I mean, we use the 3D printer to build parts for, this product, which is the pediatric trike. This is a very big seller. This has turned out to be very, very popular in their store. Yeah. I like working on these, and my wife especially likes to do things. We've gotten so much great feedback on these from parents and from professionals that just thank us so much for making that available for them.
There's been product evolution. So, we actually, when we give people a set of the pedals, we give them 2 different sizes of the bolt so that they can fit it on whatever size pedal they have to make sure that it's adaptable for whatever's needed for the child. Wayne also just recently developed a longer one because, of course, children like to ride bikes even when they're older. So now there's longer ones, and even for adults. So he makes it out of this very strong plywood that's thicker than what you would buy in, say, Home Depot. It's not purchased in Home Depot. So it's a very thick, very strong plywood. And we also extended the length of the straps so that the straps can fit over the child's braces, so that when they wear braces on their feet to keep their feet straight, this allows that to fit over. And then I think one of the most important things that Wayne committed to when he started making these is that for every pair that he sells, he donates one to the local school system so that they can be used for children in schools and preschools, but also in typical K through 12 schools so that they can adapt the bikes, because we know that schools aren't funded with a lot of money. So this is an opportunity for them to have that. So we make sure that happens for each pair that's sold.
That's wonderful. That's so great, and I'm sure that the schools appreciate it, and just I was thinking too as you were describing, how it fits around their brace and stuff, and I'm thinking about how these children's lives are greatly impacted, and this gives them joy to be able to ride a bike or a tricycle, or whereas they wouldn't have been able to without it.
Correct.
Yeah.
And we've gotten some unbelievably adorable photos. Yeah. Katie's smiling, but the cutest photos of some of the people that have bought them from Wayne. And they've said, my kid can finally now ride a bike, and it's just unbelievably wonderful.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And we have a small handful of other products that are along that line, which are just transfer boards to help children get from wheelchairs to desks, and help them with a little bit with their mobility. But if anybody listening's got ideas of things that could help that community, that's something that we really enjoy doing, and we would really spend a lot of time and effort trying to help that community.
Oh yeah, that's really great. I just feel like the longer I'm talking to you, that it's just so evident that you have found your calling, or you're doing what it is that you're supposed to be doing, and it sounds to me like you have joy in the passion for doing it, which is always important. And we talk about it a lot in the quilt world of all of our crafts being very cathartic and therapeutic for us, and if you don't like it, or the second it's not fun, then you're not going to do it, right?
Well, I have to say that many, many years ago, and Wayne may or may not remember this, I took him to a craft fair, and there was a gentleman selling some furniture or some items, and he said, I don't know that I want to do that. I don't want my hobby to become my job, because then I may not like it. And I have to tell you that in the last year that Wayne has been doing this, he worries and wants to be sure that everyone is happy, and he really wants to ensure that people are happy with what their product, or successful with the items that we make for children or adults with disabilities. But I have not seen him be unhappy. I think this has been something that has enhanced his life, and it has not been a negative. It has only been a positive. And I think it's helped us as a family to be even closer, because everybody, is part of this. Katie is our Instagram person, and my oldest daughter, Sarah, is our graphic designer, and my sons have been involved in giving ideas. And I think that it has only just made his life better and more positive. And the more that he can do, and the more that he can either help people or put things in their hands that make their lives and their hobbies better, I think that the happier he is.
Yeah, that sounds great. And it is, I always like seeing when people start their own business, and then it grows, and then it then becomes like this family business, and it allows them to spend time with their family, and gives them the flexibility, of, not doing that grind, and not being able to see your family because you're working or so forth. So, I've talked to many people on the podcast, and it started off with just, the one person. And then after a year, or maybe after so many years, then their husband kind of came on board. And it's so cool to see that. I really love it. And the support there is, I think, really important. And I'm not sure that these, people, entrepreneurs, would have gotten as far if they didn't have that support behind them.
Our shop has grown significantly since we've started. And the reason that it's grown is because I've got a daughter that really knows how to get it out there and get people excited and get people to come to our site and take a look at things. My wife says I make sure that our product is good enough that people want to come back, and we certainly have returning customers. And my wife makes sure, she's my quality control agent. She makes sure that nothing goes out of this house unless it's done properly. And it's we talk about what we have a business meeting every day at dinner time.
Oh wow.
Yeah, we do. I have to say, People always say don't go into business with your family, but now I think it helps that we all know who the CEO is. That's clear.
There's no doubt about that.
But yeah, we call them business meetings. A little business meeting every day over dinner. We all call each other virtually and we talk about what's going on, and it's just it's fun.
I have been relatively high in business organizations in my past, and so Katie, I make sure that the family has a monthly business review. So we go over, and they get, because I put a PowerPoint presentation together, and it shows our sales, and it shows our growth, and it shows what our demographics are, and even though they don't want to, they usually sit around and listen to the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's more, but it happens every month.
PowerPoint, he's starting to glaze over there. Numbers, projections.
He sounds like a nice boss now, but every now and then he threatens a demotion. Every now and then.
Oh gosh, that's too funny.
But it is true. It's part of that pandemic thing that we all learned. There's a lot of lives have been lost, and it has really affected all of us in so many ways. But we have learned, my children have all grown and flown the coop, but how wonderful that we can have time at dinner, even if it's just on a tablet where we're talking to each other about our day or about what's going on. And I think people have learned to communicate and connect in so many different ways. And I think that's one of the things that we have learned as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, Jane, you're a big part of product development and quality control. So that's great. And so is the Clapper your top selling quilter product in your shop?
By far.
Yeah.
Far, yes.
Okay, good. And then I thought I saw, okay, so it comes in maple and then the stripe. Was there another? I thought I saw this beautiful, yes, walnut.
So our friends at Frederick Hardwoods went in there, and I told her, because she gave me the idea about the ambrosia, and I told her, I said, this is absolutely, I think, I'm not 100% sure, but I think we sell more of these than we do the plain maple ones.
Mm-hmm.
And people really like these ambrosia ones. Mm-hmm. And she said, you should do walnut. So this is a solid walnut clapper. Walnut's quite a bit more expensive than the maple, but and I don't know if you can see, the grain on walnut is absolutely spectacular. Now, the thing about this one, though, because the grain, walnut with no finish is kind of a muted gray color. And when you put finish on it, it just absolutely pops. It's just beautiful wood. So we do put a finish on this one. My wife gave that, she allowed me to do that, but warn everybody. Now, we haven't had, what it is mineral oil and wax. So it's kind of a benign finish. Uh-huh. And we haven't had anybody tell us that they've had any particular issues with it. But we have to do this because the walnut is just so beautiful after it's been finished. So she's allowed me to finish this one.
But back to quality control. We finish them and let them sit and dry. Uh-huh. For a long time, so that they are not sent out, so that they would in any way get any of that on the fabric. It's right. Very, very important to me. I still won't let him put the logo on, right. But we have to finish it because this walnut is so beautiful. It's breathtaking. If you watch any of the videos that Katie has done where they go from the plain walnut to the finished walnut, it's just striking.
So we have a lot of pour videos before and after with lots of different woods, and for some of them it's really beautiful. When you see the mineral oil hit, it's like a different wood. They sparkle, they shimmer, the green comes out, and the videos have been very popular with people who are not interested in wood or in quilting. They're just really like it's that satisfying, it's like the ASMR kind of videos. They're just really satisfying to just watch it pour on, and then the wood comes out from underneath. They're really beautiful.
They're addicting to watch those.
Yeah, and when I saw that walnut in the shop, my jaw dropped and I was just like, I think I'm going to have to get this someday because it is so beautiful. It is stunning. That would be my favorite wood. I mean, I do like the ambrosia, and it would be nice, you could have a whole collection and then you can have like a little display of different
Well,
the different ones. They will become collectibles.
you can, anybody who wants to could pick any wood they want. I'm sure we could get it because we have such a wonderful wood store, and we'd be glad to make it for it. But the reason you use maple, like I said, it's maple. You go into an old tailor shop, you see all kinds of implements made of maple. Mm-hmm. Maple is the wood that tailors and quilters use.
Right, so. Right. Yeah, so beautiful. So custom designs you talked about a bit, and I guess you've pretty much explained that too. It's a customer will just contact you and ask you if you can make a certain thing, and then if you want to go ahead and try it, then how does that work? You do your drawings and your CAD drawings, and then you... Yeah,
almost always after that, I'll do a drawing and I'll send it to the customer and say, and if it's going to a customer, I'm probably going to make a photorealistic drawing and say, is this what you're thinking of? And then we go back and forth with, no, I don't like this, or can you do that? And we'll modify it until we get an agreement on what the design is.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah,
I will tell you, Wayne was mentioning some of the larger, more square or rectangle clappers.
Yeah.
And so some were, one of them I think was 10 by 14 or 9 by 14. And I actually was following that person on Instagram myself and knew that they were doing a very large paper pieced pattern, foundational paper piecing. And so what they were doing is they were completing the block, and then they were placing this large clapper on it and leaving it for a period of time so that it can absolutely flatten that paper piece block and make sure, because you don't want to put a whole lot of heat and steam on your paper piecing when you're using foundation paper piecing, warps paper, etc. So that's what this one person, that's their big specialty, is doing foundation paper piecing, and they like to use these large full-size blocks to get that good press on for their foundational blocks.
Before they take the paper off.
Correct.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, foundation paper piecing does create a lot of overlapped seams and bulk. So I could see how that could be useful. Yeah, I think it's really good, and I'm glad that I found you guys and that you have come onto my show. It's really been lovely, and I just hope you continued success with your shop. Let me know if there's anything else you want to say.
Yes, as the Vice President of Marketing, we do have a code if anybody does want to stop by. It is STEPH10, 10% off. And then if you're just looking out, we're going into holiday season, we're definitely going to have some sales. So keep us in mind if you're thinking, boy, this is really nice, but maybe I should wait for Christmas. Send your husband a little note saying, hey, Black Friday's coming up. Maybe you should take a look. We'll have some sales for sure for the holiday.
Oh, wonderful. That's awesome. Thank you so much. And it was so nice to meet you, Katie, Jane, and Wayne.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful being here.
Great. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you would like a bonus episode every month, become a patron and support the Make and Decorate podcast show at my Patreon page, Make and Decorate. For extended show notes with links and photos to what we've talked about, visit my podcast blog at makeanddecorate.com. And remember to take some time for yourself to be creative. Bye-bye.
Because I try to keep a stock of everything. We're not building when we get the order. I usually do. If I get an order for one, I usually build one, but we had one down in our warehouse. So
I would like to clarify, my husband used the word warehouse. We have a closet in our basement.
No, it's our warehouse.
And he called it the... I imagine your listeners imagining this big warehouse. It's a closet, and it's on some shelves in our closet. But We call it the warehouse because it makes us smile.